Jesus taking the power of death from him who held that power, the devil, right? In Hebrews 2:14-15, having the keys of death and Hades, Revelation 1:18. Who had those keys before, right? Josh Davidson, you were talking about how in Greek mythology, a lot of times it was Hades that was understood to hold that, right? And it's actually very common for different mythologies to have different ideas, or even for a mythology that has a kind of a similar pantheon to have different ideas about who held those keys, right? So even looking at kind of the Greco-Roman side of things, you have Hades, you have Hecate, you have Diana or Artemis. You have these different gods that were understood by people to hold that. And you even have this kind of idea of like a range of ideas around Hades being like a god, or Hades being a place, or being like personified but not necessarily god. Like there's a lot of murkiness in there. But I think the common ground that we tend to have is this idea that when you die, you go there and you cannot get out. And you cannot get out because there's someone that holds the keys, right? And what we see in Hebrews 2:14-15 is the identification of that someone as the devil, right? So scripture is not running away from these ideas that people had about people going down to Hades when they die, about there being some kind of spiritual power that has the keys that is keeping people there. It actually has very specific ideas about who that actually is, right? And so one of the things that I would recommend as well as this book by Justin Bass, The Battle for the Keys. And this is really great. He sets a lot of the cosmic geography we've been talking about. And like I was kind of laughing. I sent this message to the group when we were kind of preparing for this. One of the things I wanted to do is to start to get together a list of relevant passages that talk about some of these things, or and so like where is Sheol talked about? Where is is Hades talked about? Where's the idea that somebody has that power, the power of death, and now Jesus is the Lord of both the living and the dead? Where do we get these ideas, right? And I started looking through it, and I realized it's a much shorter list just to go through and say the books it doesn't, like, nothing comes up in, right? Because his list of scripture citations, it's like Genesis to Revelation, and there's just a handful that are not there. So if you want a good introduction to what we're talking about in book form, it is academic, but it's pretty accessible for an academic resource. It's relatively short. It's like 100 pages basically, and he talks about you know death and Hades and Sheol and paradise and Abraham's side and all of these different concepts that we're talking about.